Hey there, Samantha Garrett here, and today I've got my 5 top tips for getting more out of Google Tasks so you can stay on top of all of those things that you've got to do. So Google Tasks is a wonderful tool that's built inside your Google account, whether you're using it for work or for school or personally, and there's a stack of little things that you can do in there to really help you just feel organized and on top of all of the things you've got to do. So let's jump in now and start digging into these 5 tips. Okay, so I am going to start today in Google Calendar because that is one of the places that you can access Google Tasks. Now you can also access it from Gmail and a few other places as well, but let's start today in Calendar. So on the right-hand side, I've got Google Tasks open. Now, if you've never opened it before, if you're a first timer, you will find it using this little icon in the side panel here in Google Tasks. Now, if for some reason you don't see this side panel, I'll just quickly show you. Often what can happen is down the bottom where you see this little arrow is it might actually be hidden. So if I hide it, it's gone. If I click that arrow, it pops back out and then I can open Google Tasks from there. Okay, so the first tip I've got for you today is around having multiple lists. So when you first start using Google Tasks, you have one list, which is just called My Tasks, and you'll see that that's what's open now. I've got it up the top here. But I recommend for task management to actually have a few different lists. Now, it's this fine balance between having too many and not enough. Now, the reason I think that we need multiple is that if you just have one giant list with everything, and that's what you work off day to day, you can feel like you never actually achieve your list. You never get everything on it done because, of course, it just grows and grows. So what I do, I'll just drop this down. I've got a few different systems, and depending on the kind of work I'm doing and who I'm working with depends on which one I recommend. But I'm just going to introduce you to one today. So this particular system you'll see I've got here, got a few different lists. The first one is parking lot. Now, parking lot is that kind of master list where everything goes on usually initially. So it's kind of that list that we work on. We put stuff on when it might pop into our mind, but not everything on there, always gets done or worked on at the same time. So things are parked on that list, as the name suggests. So similar to kind of a backlog in some of the agile methodologies as well. So that's that one. Now, next up, as the name suggests, is when things are on in the parking lot and you're like, I need to work on that next, whether it be this week, next week, whatever, you can move it over to next up. So you know then that they're the things that are going to be actioned next. In progress, as the name suggests, are things you're currently working on. So these kind of go in order, right? From parking lot to next up to in progress. Now, waiting for is a bit of a holding bay for things that you are working on, but you're waiting for something to move that forward, whether that be for someone to help you, to get some information, maybe a certain time frame, whatever that might be. So what's really important about this system is that we're not actively working off parking lot, right, which is the huge list with everything. We are actively working off in progress, which is a lot shorter, and we can get a real good feel for what's going on. So if you want to create some extra lists, you can see down here we've got create new list. So you can just jump in, you can give that list a name, and you are done. Now I'm just going to cancel that one. The other thing you can do, if you want to use the My Tasks, like the one that you get by default, but you want to change the name, you can have that list open and then come over to the little dots here and you can come in and rename the list if you want to. So I've kept it there for demos, but you can rename it. Now, if you want to move to any of these lists, you just click on them and that particular list will come up. So you can move between them pretty easily, and then you can move tasks between them as well. So see this one here, sign up for Gmail productivity course. I can click on these little dots here and I can just select another list if I want to move it over to that. Alrighty, so that was tip number 1. Now, tip number 2 is to do with starred, which you might have noticed in our list of lists. So starred is kind of like a special list that happens automatically. When you star a task, which is kind of like favoriting it, it will come on the starred list. Now, how I recommend using this in conjunction with those other lists I mentioned is that you can use starred for the things that you actively want to focus on that particular day. So I'm a big fan of having really short to-do lists that are very focused on that day because it means you've actually got a good chance of ticking everything off and getting a lovely sense of satisfaction and completion when you do that. So let's just say you've got some things on in progress. Now, I don't, but that's okay. Why don't we come to my next up, right? That's okay. On my next up, let's imagine I've got these here, and I think today I would definitely need to contact Lacey about the invoice. So I can come here and star that one. And then if I come up now to my list at the top and go to starred, you'll see it on there. So this almost becomes like a daily list without having a list called daily. And what is really important about using this is you need to keep it maintained. So either in first thing in the morning or last thing in the evening before you knock off work, you can come in and you can star and unstar things. So you might unstar them if they're no longer a priority, or you might tick them off if they're done, and then you might star new things for tomorrow. So just be really conscious of having to maintain that. Now I just want to flip back to next up because I want to show you as well, if you read one of your other lists, like next up, and you want to make sure those starred ones are really obvious, you can come up here to the little dots at the top and you can sort the list by a few different things, but you can sort by starred recently. And that'll put the ones you've starred recently right at the top, which is just a nice way of distinguishing them from the others. Okay, so 2 tips down. Now, tip number 3 is all about breaking tasks down. So let's take, for example, this one here, Organize Q3 Team Offsite. While that feels like a task, it's actually more like a mini project because there's a lot that needs to be done to organize that particular event. So when we just have it on our task list as one thing like that, it can be very hard to get started on it because it seems so big and overwhelming because there's so many parts and we can't complete it in one sitting. So what I recommend you do is you use the subtasks feature in Google Tasks to break this down into smaller chunks, i.e. all of the things that you need to do to actually complete this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this task. So you'll see I've got a details section here, so I could come in and just write notes in there if I wanted to. But what I like to do is click on these little dots here and add a subtask. So that will add underneath a little subtask here. So the first thing I might do, for example, this is choose date, right? So that might be the first thing. Then if I click away here, I might add another one and I might call this one choose venue, whatever that might be. And this might be, again, in more detail, research venue, that kind of stuff. So these ones you'll see here are underneath the offsite. Now you might be wondering why these subtasks aren't actually kind of like indented or reflected underneath this organized Q3. They kind of just look like regular tasks rather than subtasks of this one. So a little hint here is when you are using that starred recently view that we just did, it will actually display like this, which is not quite correct. But if we were to come up here and change the view to my order, you'll see it actually changes them around and it's actually got them like indented underneath. So we can very clearly see that they are subtasks of this particular parent task. Now, when you're using this My Order, you can just drag and drop things around as well. So you can still move things to the top there if you want to have a particular focus on them. Okay, so tip number 4, we are up to 4. This is all about using dates for things that need to be done at a specific date or time. So if I click on this one here for renewing the Canvas subscription, you'll see there's a date and time option. Now, I don't typically add dates to everything on my task list. I only add a date if that is relevant to the task. So let's just say this subscription is due for renewal on the 15th of April, right? I want to make sure that I have that date in there because it's relevant. So if I come in here and I'm going to select the 15th of April and I can put a time if I want to, so I might put that at 10 o'clock and I'm going to click OK. What will happen is in my calendar, if we come over to the 15th of April, there it is, you'll see it shows in the calendar. So I really love this because you're kind of getting it in 2 places. On the task list, sure, but you're also going to get it in calendar with a pop-up reminder so you don't forget. Now, if let's just say this is something that has to be done every month, then you could actually come in here and you could repeat it. So this little button here will repeat this reminder on the same day and time every month. So this is particularly good for things you have to do regularly. So obviously like renewing something is an example, but it might be you have to submit a weekly or monthly report or just anything you need to check up on regularly. You can set it as a repeating task. Okay, so there were 4 tips, and you may be wondering, where is this 5th tip? So tip number 5 is actually to get the Google Tasks mobile app. Now, I'm not necessarily telling you that so you can like take your work home with you and all of that kind of thing. I'm more saying it because it's really helpful to have your task list on hand wherever you are, so that if something pops into your mind that you have to do, you can get it out of your mind and onto your task list as quickly as possible. So even when we've knocked off from the workday and we're at home, we might be with our families or cooking or something. Often there's still work tasks floating around in the back of your mind. And when you have your task list handy, you can quickly get them out of your mind and straight into that list on your mobile. And of course, if you're using Google Tasks personally, this is even more important because you could be on the go anywhere and just have like, I need to remember to do this. I really want to do that. Great. Grab out your task list and pop it on there. So there you have it, my 5 top tips. Now, if you want even more tips, I have recently popped together a couple more videos on Google Tasks. One is how you can turn an email into a task and add that email to your task list, including with a link to the email. And the other one is how you can assign tasks from Google Docs. So it might be that you've got some action items sitting in a Google Doc and you want to put them on your task list or maybe someone else's task list. You can do that right from Google Docs. So I'll pop the links to both of those videos in the notes below. So thanks so much for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you found this helpful, or feel free to give us a little like, and do subscribe as well if you haven't already and you want some more Google tips and tricks. That's it for today. See you next time.